everyone. Welcome to another episode of What the Fuck Did I Just Watch? And today we're going to talk about Jim Henson's The Storyteller. And of course, we've got John Paul Mantilla here, and we've got Pixie Patton here. Pixie is a belly dance buddy. She dances with Lotus Lifted, and she also makes amazing crafts and belts and bindies and stuff. So you should probably look her up for all that. But so we're all huge Henson fans, though I have to say that both Pixie and John Paul, their vast knowledge of Henson far outweighs mine. My whole thought on Jim Henson, though, I believe that he's solely responsible for Gen X being sarcastic, innuendo-filled smartasses that we are, because we all grew up on the Muppet Show and the Muppet movies, and there's a lot of sophisticated humor in there. But yeah, and I still get teary-eyed at the thought that Jim Henson's dead. Kind of mad about it still. He should have lived to be like 350, so we could have had him all, just forever. There were some weird things though, like so COSI, which is a science and interactive museum that's here in Columbus, Ohio. They had the Jim Henson's puppet like mobile display that was up. I think it was either last year or 2018. It's all a blur now. And I went to go see it, and there was some it was amazing. I mean, they had costumes from the Labyrinth. They had, Kermit the Frog. They had, things from the Dark Crystal. They had everything you can possibly think about. And they had some rather obscure knowledge that I didn't realize. Like Jim Henson had wrote some TV series or a TV show that was called The Cube in 1969. And I think the Cube movie that happened later on in the 80s and 90s, it seems like it was roughly or loosely based off of that, just from what I can read up on it. So I found that kind of fascinating. Then Youth 68, which is like a documentary he put together, which was kids and rock and roll and drugs and stuff in a positive light as opposed to society going against it. So, I mean, obviously a hippie from the start, and I think he's just impacted the entire world. And Pixie chose The Storyteller, which after having watched it again, I do kind of remember seeing an episode or two in the late 80s, but I had to have seen it on the Jim Henson Hour and not realize that that's what happened, because as I researched it, actually The Storyteller was released in England in 1987, and it actually only showed up here in 89 on the Henson Hour, and then didn't show up as The Storyteller until I think it was 1997 on HBO. So it's interesting facts, but it's on Amazon Prime right now. So if you have access to it, I highly recommend you watch it. And after all that babbling, I'm going to hand it over to John Paul and Pixie to just give all the extra thought about Henson and The Storyteller. And Pixie, why you picked the 3 episodes that you picked for us to focus in on.
Well, the first one that I picked was The True Bride. And The True Bride is, if you remember, those who remember the Henson Story Hour or the Henson Hour, he was always with this big white lion. There was lots of shots of Henson sort of introducing the show with this big white lion. And that for me, when I watched it, I watched them today, so they'd be really fresh. And today, as soon as that white lion came on the screen, I just cried. I just can't help it. It's every single time. But anyway, it's so woven into my childhood that my dad passed away in 2003, and I've got a very big connection because we used to watch all this Henson stuff together. So when I see that white lion, I'm instantly connected to my father. It's a very strange connection, but it's true. And another short little story about the one situation that I've ever had with sort of someone speaking to me from beyond the grave was my dad had passed away a few months before. I was walking through a Walmart, and I didn't know that they had put out all of the episodes of Storyteller on a DVD. That's when they re-released it. I think it was about 2002, 2003. And I was just feeling really bad and missing them because we were close. And there's this random DVD at this, in a totally different section. And I see it. It's literally the halo behind me, like a beacon of this DVD, shining almost. And I felt like it was my dad being here's the thing. So I'm still connected to you. So that's one of my big connections with it. I chose that one because the white lion just always gets me, and that particular one has Sean Bean from, we later know as, he's in Lord of the Rings and he's at Stark. So,
Super
and
young.
yeah, another connection to HBO and the Henson stuff was Fraggle Rock was the first HBO show that was produced for HBO. So without Fraggle Rock, we wouldn't maybe have had Game of Thrones because it came first. It was the first HBO TV show. So anyway, I picked that one because I love the story. It's beautiful. It's the clothing, as Jenny said, I'm a costumer. So and I'm a medieval reenactor as well. And the wardrobe in that one is just really like rich and lovely and just kind of, delicious. So I liked it for that. Sap Sorrow I picked because I do believe it's from Germany, and it was one of the original roots of what we know as Cinderella now. I really enjoyed that one because you can see where Cinderella's story started with Sap Sorrow, and then it grew. Although, as I was watching it, as we get into it, it's kind of problematic. So, and Jenny and I are probably thinking the same thing. That dude right there is problematic. I got beef with that dude. I'm a vegetarian, but I got beef. So
Yeah.
that's that one. She should have been like, listen.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. Yeah.
So anyway, that's the roots of Cinderella that we all know and love today. And I chose the Luck Child because there is that griffin. That griffin, I'm a huge Brian Froud fanatic, and he conceptually designed the Dark Crystal and Labyrinth, and that griffin was a Brian Froud. If you look at it, you can see the Fireys from Labyrinth, the take off her head, you can see them in that, and his art is just so there, and it's so beautiful, and again, with the costuming on that particular one, it is very Russian. You can see the Russian and the Czech influence in it, and it's just gorgeous. It's just, they're three, just beautiful. I love them all. It was hard for me to choose, but those three are definitely right up there for me.
So yeah, so to take it back around, thank you for the insight into that. True Bride, I thought was interesting on so many levels because one, the fact that the troll's daughter is the troll up just has me giggling just on so many levels. I kind of admire the trollop for a couple of reasons. One, her dad was a dick and she was like, okay, bye, and left. She likes what she likes, and she has men that she calls ornament, as in ornaments. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot to admire there, despite the fact that she's greedy and a terrible, terrible creature. But I love the lion too. The way the lion came to the aid of the true bride and just helped her out, because she's just like, well, the troll is my dad and mom, so gonna do what I have to do to take care of it. And the lion was like, well, this is some shit, I'll fix this for you. And the fact that the lion was like, yeah, so that door that he just fell into his death, I put that there. So that's what he gets. He gets what he gets. But I had a couple things my brain was like, why didn't she just say for one of the second or third times, a night with your, with your betrothed while he's awake? I can add that little thing in there, but I guess it wouldn't be the same fairy tale if they logicked that out. But John Paul, you really loved that lion too. Wasn't that something that you mentioned?
Absolutely love the lion. It just the way the lion looks, almost real. The piercing blue eyes that are just hypnotic, and just the scenes where especially when the lion is going to lick up,
Yes. It looks like a cat drinking.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Jim Henson just has such a way of just making his puppets just be so real, and especially even the troll. I mean, the face of the troll, how menacing it looks, but also goofy at the same time, is just so cool. I just was like, just enamored how awesome they look. And the trollop, when she just starts getting all of her riches and she gets dolled up. I don't know. It made me laugh and just be like, wow, this is just so cool. And even the dog that is Kurt's co-star
Like, it's a puppet, but it looks very realistic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And it's just such a character. And you look at your own pets, whether you have a dog or a cat or whatever, and you're just like, you're like your own Muppet. You're like my Muppet. So
I may have been very heavily influenced by the White Lion in a lot of ways as I reach over here. A little bit. I mean, a little bit.
Kind of the same scowl too, for sure, huh?
Yeah, the same scowl. I just woke him up. I pulled him off the chair. He was like sleeping. So.
Yeah.
But I did also think it's funny. You got the very young Sean Bean, and he doesn't die.
No, he doesn't die. It's amazing.
One of the most amazing things, because now that's the joke. You see Sean Bean, and you're like, "Well, you're gonna die."
Oh yeah.
I couldn't figure out who it was at first. Like, I had to look it up because I'm like, I know that face. Who the hell is that? Yeah. And I was like, oh shit, that's Sean Bean. And he didn't die. The two thoughts I had about that.
In Bond movie that he's in, he dies.
I like that in going back to the whole other one being problematic, but that one is almost like a little bit feminist. Henson had this way of really building strong female characters like that on a lot of occasions. I mean, if we look at Kira from The Dark Crystal, and Sarah from Labyrinth, they're both very strong female characters. And this woman, really and truly, Sean Bean, who was a bigger name than this girl at the time, really was very forward, and it was all about her, and he was kind of the damsel in distress. Yeah, it's gorgeous.
She
he was the
rescued
ornament. The ornament.
100%.
It's pretty good. I mean, even in that time, that was kind of far forward reaching for that. And I think that Henson too was Lisa Henson, his daughter, was the reason that he did this, because she was in college and she was reading folktales, and I think she's an English major, literature major, and she was reading these folktales, and she was just like, oh, these tales that I've never heard before from these different cultures are amazing. And I think it was almost his homage to her. And if you're doing something as an homage to your daughter, why wouldn't you make the women sort of like the focus on a lot of these, on especially that one?
That's interesting that you say that, because a lot of the episodes did have, women heroines, or at least it was balanced enough where you had a mix of it, where normally, you're right, your fairy tales are generally damsels in distress, or the female heroine is one who's just quiet and cleans the floors and does what she's told and doesn't talk back and is, gracious, and and the evil women are always the ones that are assertive or domineering, or just dicks or
right. And I think it's really funny how in Sap Sorrow too, you have that sort of like, Sap Sorrow was very uncomfortable and horrified by her lot in life, that she was going to have to marry her father. That's just crazy bananas. And really and truly, in that time, that would have just went on anyway, because they were all into that kind of thing.
Incestuous in the royal
yes, absolutely. Sure. But she did not like her lot, so she and her friends, her animal friends, changed it. Yeah, she did the work. She also, I feel like what they didn't mention with this, going back to this being problematic and him being a dick, is they should have showed him coming clean and apologizing for being a dick to her. That was the one thing this was missing. But again, it was 1987 or 83, so
if he picks on you, he likes you. Yeah, no.
Yeah. Boys will be boys.
But yeah, no, great segue. So Sap Sorrow is also is definitely a variation on the Cinderella tale. And so it starts out with not the shoe fitting, but the ring fitting. because her father proclaims that whoever fits the wedding ring that had belonged to her mother who died would be his queen. And so she's got two sisters. Her sisters are kind of nutty and greedy and, domineering. And of course, Sapsar is sweet and kind and, forgiving of her sisters and cleans the house and all the normal Cinderella type stuff. And her sisters decide that they don't want a new mother. And so they originally were trying to see if the ring fit them, thinking that that would cause their father not to get married. And then, of course, it gets stuck halfway on one of the sisters, and Sapsar yanks it off of the other sister, and then it falls, and she doesn't think about it. She picks it up to try to hide it from her father and slips it on her ring finger, and oops, it fits her perfectly. So here's one also problematic to me. This, at least in this fairy tale, like it's portrayed like that nobody's comfortable with the idea of the father marrying the daughter in this at all. Like it's not happy. But they're all like, well, it's what you proclaimed. I mean, it's the king. He proclaimed it. He can unproclaim it. Or he could just say, this just means that this is my daughter that's going to inherit then. There are ways out of it. But again, you wouldn't have the same fairy tale if they didn't do it. So now Sapsaro and her dad are supposed to get married. And Sapsaro's like, yeah, I don't want to marry my dad.
So let me figure out how to stall. Let me just do the ultimate stall. Let me tell him I need all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, go ahead, John Paul.
I was gonna say in Sapsaro, what I enjoyed about it most was that this was a better telling of the Cinderella tale, because, and especially because most people know the Cinderella tale more like the Disney Cinderella,
for sure.
And in this one, it was more real, more believable. I mean, aside from I understand the gripes of the gentleman in it, but just the way it was even portrayed, of how the animals interacted with her, how the dresses were made, and even just the wants of her were just kind of, I don't know, I just felt like they were much better. And like you guys alluded before, of that the women were predominant. And even as weird it was, the crazy stepsisters, as they were portrayed a lot better than the Disney ones. That yes, they were quote unquote mean, but they weren't like viciously mean. They weren't villains.
Yeah, they were more like your standard bullying older or younger, just actual stuff you would normally have with your siblings.
They were brats. I mean, they were royal. They were royal children. So
right.
they were brats
in some regards. So I thought that was a lot better. And again, with all of these, I really like how these tales are told. I mean, I just, and visually, again, it's just something about these creatures and the way they do stuff. It's just so inventive.
Sapsaro's fur and hair, where like whenever there's like a little mouse would stick out here, you'd see a tail wing in here. It was like gross and awesome at the same time.
Exactly.
Oh, dude, I would do it any day. Like any day, I would have mice living in my pockets. I kind of wanted to be her at that point, and just for one, there's a badger. There's a shot of this badger,
under
this
the
puppet
carpet.
That's like, oh my God, it's so gorgeous. And then, again, as a costumer, can we just take a minute for that dress made of stars?
Mm-hmm.
Holy shit. It's just absolutely beautiful. Every attention to detail on this show is bananas.
Yep. Yeah. So basically, Sapsar, to avoid marrying, for people who haven't watched and don't want to watch it, but you should watch it, to avoid marrying her father, she basically tells them that she asked for one dress at first. It's supposed to be pale silk, the color of the moon at night, that they have to go around and find it for. And when they come up with that one, she's like, okay, well, that's the dress for this. I need a dress for the party after the wedding. And that has to be the color of the midnight skies with the stars. So they go and do that. And then, while this is happening and they're coming up with these dresses, her and her animal friends are building the Sapsar suit, which is, as we said, this fur feather kind of Sasquatch looking thing that you don't have any clues being built at first. You just know that she's just delaying the wedding. And then she asks for a third dress for the ceremony itself, which has to be the golden color of the sun. And she gets, and she tells them when that dress comes, the next day she'll marry her dad. Of course, they give her that dress, and she's like, okay, the next day I'll marry. And then when they go take her out for the ceremony, she's gone, and she's now Sap Sorrow in this, or what was it, snaggle tag is what she ends up being called.
Yeah.
In this hair and fursuit. And then she goes to another kingdom where she tends geese and cleans the kitchen floors in another castle for another royal family, where she eventually encounters her prince, who's a dick.
Oh my God.
He's not as dick as he could be.
He's just a snotty brat. I mean, he's a royal snotty brat. The realism was really there, and the characters in here are flawed. They're flawed. Right. So it's just, and my favorite part of their interaction, his interaction with her in the suit, was when he says, I want 12 geese. And she says something back, and he goes, well, I rather like geese. And she goes, I rather like geese too. That's why I don't eat them. And the animal activist in me was like, yes, girl, yes.
For which he kicks her in the butt, basically, not harsh, but does like a little pushover with her foot. And it was like, that's for like your mouthiness, basically. And he'd already had lectured her about being rude enough to stare at a personage of royalty to begin with. And so, yeah, while she's scrubbing the floors and he's bugging her about, I want 12 geese, tell the cook.
But I did have a think about, because I thought, well, that's really problematic with the way that he treats her in the suit and then not acknowledging that at the end. And I thought, why would she, knowing that he treated her like that, why would she still love him? And then I had to think about it, and I came to the conclusion, she loves the person that she knows he can be when they're actually at the ball scene, when he's treating her like that, you know. And we've all done that. I mean, my God, I'm super guilty of it. But
well, I like to theorize there might be more in the actual fairy tale where the interaction is deeper than that, you know, because they just, for the ball scenes, they just show them dancing, you know. Right. And then the only true in-depth interaction they have with each other is when he's, you know, on the steps, you know, tore up because he doesn't realize that Sap Sorrow is Straggletooth, and therefore he's trying to get a hold of Sap Sorrow, who's just basically princess who just shows up mysteriously at the ball in the most fabulous gowns ever, aka the three she had for her wedding, had made for her wedding with her dad that didn't happen. And so, you know, he's entranced by her looks, though. Still, I mean, that's kind of the shallowness of fairy tales to begin with, you know. It's very much entranced by the looks. Like you don't really see them having deep conversations while they're dancing at the ball, and he just knows that he loves this woman because she's the most fascinating looking one at the ball, I guess. I don't know.
Well, but they're all period pieces too, and in those periods it's kind of like that.
You don't have a lot of opportunity to meet people if you have an arranged marriage and such.
Let alone an arranged with your father.
I mean, at least she knew her dad well.
I mean,
hypothetically.
Ew.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I guess they made him, the idea that he was supposed to be redeemable was because even as Snaggletooth, when she tries on or Snaggle, whatever her name,
Snaggle Tag.
Thank you, Snaggle Tag. When she tries, so at the end, of course, much like the original Cinderella story, Sap Sorrow loses a shoe at the ball. The prince finds the shoe, declares that whoever fits the shoe will be the woman that he marries. And she eventually tries on the shoe, and of course it fits, and she tries it on as Snaggle Tag. And you know, and she's like, will you honor your word? And the prince is like, well, yeah, I'll honor my word. It fits you. So Snaggle Tag, you're it. And then of course she's revealed as Sap Sorrow. But
I like the way they did that too, because it wasn't like Disney magic did it. Her animal friends actually came and physically removed all of that stuff. I really thought that was a very nice touch on that.
I liked it too. It was much better, especially since they had all the creatures like crawling out of everywhere around the palace.
Yeah.
Which I thought was kind of a commentary where he said, like earlier, where he was pointing out that there's different people and the lives don't intertwine. I forgot exactly how he said it, but there's people that are with the geese and, you know, hens lay eggs, and he did this whole like thing, like natural order of things to explain where he and Snaggletag, sorry, stuck on Tooth, should not even be talking. Like that's how they should interact. And then like in the end, when you see like all these animals are already in the castle and they're already in there, they already were interacting. And it was just his belief, is how I interpreted it, that they were separate, that was making it separate when it wasn't.
Yep.
It taught him a lesson.
For sure. But I would think the feminist in me, the better lesson would be like, yeah, so I don't want to marry you anyway.
Right. I kept thinking she was gonna, I don't know what, later as an adult, I kept thinking, why didn't she just like go live in a forest by herself with her critter friends and like take all the geese with her? That's what I would have done.
Yeah.
Later, dude, taking your geese.
Go anywhere in the world and you're gonna scrub the floors in somebody's, okay, I mean, if that's your thing, go do it.
She should have went back and claimed her inheritance and then taken our animal friends and kicked her sisters out and then lived happily ever after with her creatures.
Another good option.
That's just me.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too, where the two sisters were like, yeah, we don't have parents, they're dead, so we're not from anybody. They don't exist anymore.
That might have been a thing, commentary on Disney, because there's always the dead mom, the dead fondly remembered mom with Disney. There's like, what is this?
And the evil stepmother who takes her place.
Right. I am a stepmother, and let me tell you what.
I was an evil stepmother, so it worked out well in my case. But, not every stepmother's evil.
No, I'm quite nice, and I make shit for them. And
But yeah. So then the Luck Child, that's the Russian one. Now, folktale-wise, I don't know if you ever look into any of the Slavic or Russian folktales. They are dark.
oh
They
yeah,
do not have a happy ending. They are like the darkest fucking tales you're gonna run across. Like, if you want to like be depressed and to suicide, read you some Russian or Slavic freaking folk tales, because you're gonna be like, and there's no hope for the world. Okay. No good deed goes unpunished. That's a Slavic thing. How nice of you. Now you're gonna die terribly. But the Luck Child, at least in the case of Henson, it does have a happy ending. So there's that.
it does. It totally does. And there's that griffin. Oh my.
I love that griffin.
I want to know where that puppet is, because I want to go and puppet nap it, and I want to live with it. And it's just absolutely beautiful. And we call him Scritch Scratch in this house, because we've got a dragon kind of sconce thing that looks like him, and we call him Scritch Scratch.
Good name.
He's mentioned fondly.
He likes having scritches and scratches.
He does. I would hang out with him. I would be the goulash guy too, and just to hang out with you. I might fear my life all the time, but he looks so much like a fiery. Like every time I see it again, I'm always taken aback by the gorgeous Brian Froud designs of those critters. And you can also see Skeksis in there too, because of the bird,
Yeah, the beak and the.
Yeah, so pretty, just so pretty.
Yeah. So yeah, the Luck Child, of course, the seventh son of the seventh son, born on the second Friday in a week. All the old stuff. Who's prophesized to become the next king of this kingdom, and the king who hears this prophecy is a greedy, kind of nasty man who's like, no, nobody's taking my kingdom. Certainly not some peasant boy that just happens to be the seventh son of a seventh son. So he goes initially to kill the baby, and the baby flies off a cliff and does not die, and he gets picked up as a foundling later on. And so years later, after the king is married and has his own daughter who's 16.
Okay, so the shot of, I was thinking about it today, the shot of the king as the daughter grows up and he's like greedily like petting her hair almost
Creepy.
incestually. Who did that remind you guys of just a little bit?
Oh, it reminds you that the guy who shall soon be out of this country, one would hope.
The sitting
Once they
king
drag
that
his
won't
ass in the
leave.
Once they drag his ass out of the White House, I'm sure he's probably going to flee the country, because he's probably got tons of lawsuits and people will be coming after him.
Let's hope.
I mean, it's that
nothing.
rape one that's still pending.
Yeah. But yeah, when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's Ivanka. Ooh.
there's Trump, my kingdom and my precious little daughter. Yeah. And I agree, creepy incestuous vibes for sure in that scene. It's a little like very uncomfortable to watch. Like, that's not.
But then later when he gets his, it becomes even sweeter.
It does, absolutely. So yeah, the king's traveling his lands for some reason. Again, he comes across peasants and finds out that that their child is a foundling, and it ends up being the same child that he threw off a cliff, 16, 17 years earlier. And so he realizes it's the luck child. So of course this king, who's just like terrible prick, he's like, yeah, so you should be at court. So
that costume, sorry to interrupt, but the
Go ahead.
costuming that the Millers are wearing, the Miller and his wife, that costuming is so, that in particular that she's wearing is so historically accurate that it's insane. Like I looked at it, I was like, oh,
straight out of the Russian peasantry for sure.
Beautiful,
Yep.
just beautiful.
With
Sorry, had
embroidery
to.
No, I don't blame you. So yeah, so he sends the luck child, who's now being called Lucky, basically, with the note to go to his court. And of course, the note says that he's supposed to give to the queen, and the queen's supposed to read this note that says basically, tear this bearer of this note, to cut them into 1,000 pieces, and discard the body upon receiving this. So off he goes, and he falls down a hole into like a thieves' den, where he runs into this cook, and the cook's like basically gives him a sleeping draft. So that's waiting for his sisters, ironically, who are the thieves, to come back and basically roll him and kill him and slit his throat. But the cook himself, he doesn't do throat slitting. That's woman's work there.
See, another one where the women are like the badasses yet again.
But he reads the note that he's supposed to give, that's supposed to go to the king, reads that it's supposed to get this bear cut into 1,000 pieces. Like, well, that sucks. And the cook also happens to be an excellent forger, so he copies the king's handwriting, basically says instead, make the bearer of this note is to be wed to the king's daughter. So of course, Lucky shows up at court, he hands the note to the queen. The queen's like, well, this is weird. I wouldn't expect my husband to write something like this, but okay. So they announce the betrothal, and up comes the king, and he sees this, and he's like, wait, what? And he comes up with another plan. The next plan being that, you have, of course, now you can't just marry my princess daughter. You're a peasant. You have to go get the golden feather from the back of the griffin, which is a man-eating griffin. So the queen and the daughter, the princess, they know that basically the dad's trying to send him to his death, because they know nobody comes back from the griffin. And, Lucky's like, that's fine. Because he's lucky. He gets thrown off the cliff.
I think his word exactly was, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
No one ever comes back. Well, we'll see. So off he goes. He runs into the ferryman. The ferryman takes you over to the island with the griffin. And the ferryman tells a story that he's just been stuck rowing back and forth for like time unknown, and he doesn't know how to be able to stop. And so, of course, Lucky's like, well, I'll ask. I'll find out. And the ferryman's like, well, that's really nice. I've asked everybody to do that, but nobody comes back. So, and of course, there's Lucky with another we'll see kind of moment. And Lucky, of course, shows up on the Griffin's Island, and who is there but his cook buddy, who, he never knew what happened to, because, when he woke up, he basically, from the cook's draft, he was facing the castle and on his way, never knew what happened with that. So he's just like, oh, hey, cook, nice. And the cook's like, yeah, so he ate my sister's, the griffin here, but he likes my cooking, so I'm still alive. So hide yourself. We'll see what we can do. And, Lucky's like, I need the feather, the gold feather off his back, and I need to know how the ferryman can stop being a fairy, having to do the ferrying back and forth anymore. And of course, the cook's like, okay. So he feeds the griffin, plucks the feather off the back. Basically, the griffin has a moment where he feels bad because, the cook calls him a beast, and he's like, I'm a bird.
My misunderstood bird. My no beastie.
I love that scene. I have to say that was one of my favorite scenes.
I know. My misunderstood bird.
Let me give the bird squitches and make him feel better about being a misunderstood bird, not a beastie. And also the cook gets the answer for the ferryman as well. He says, like, how does that ferryman stop being a ferry, ferrying people across? And the griffin's just like, oh, well, he just offers it to the next person, offers the pole to the next person, and the next person who gets the pole becomes the new ferryman, and he can go on his happy way. So the cook buddy helps him, and the cook seems to be mostly content feeding the griffin and just staying there the Lucky grabs a whole bunch of treasure on his way out of the Griffin's den, pops back into the boat with the ferryman, tells the ferryman all he needs to do to get out of being the ferryman anymore, and heads back happily to his princess. And the king's like, wait, what? How did you come back from the Griffin Island with all these riches and stuff? And, Lucky's like, I just did. Or does he even trick him? I kind of forgot now, and I just watched it. He just basically tells the story that he went there and back, doesn't he? He doesn't make
He
it.
kind of doesn't even have to. He knows the king well enough at this point to just let him hang himself, basically. He knows he's just going to, as soon as he sees the riches, he's going to be out of the picture.
Yep. And that's pretty much what happened. The king's like, well, I'm going to go get me some more gold because I don't have enough. Of course, he goes running down there. The ferryman's like, sure, you want my boat? Here's the pole. Go ferry yourself across the island. And therefore, the king becomes the next ferryman. And the rest of his life, he's rowing people back and forth to their deaths with the Griffin. And Lucky and the princess get married. And Lucky, of course, then inherits the kingdom, just like it was prophesized. Which is, again, back to like a lot of the Slavic and a lot of fairy tales in general. Like if you try to fight prophecy, you end up causing it to happen, which is pretty much exactly what happens in this case. Like everything the king did propelled the prophecy forward. There was no getting out of it.
Henson did the same thing with the Dark Crystal. If you look at the prophecy with that, and if you guys have seen Age of Resistance yet, and if you haven't seen Age of Resistance, buy everything holy. You should watch it. It's fantastic. He did the prophecy thing too, because the Skeksis, after learning about the prophecy, they tried to wipe out the Gelfling. It was kind of like the prophecy and they were draining them. It just was real, lucky for them. But then they end up fulfilling it accidentally. So Henson was a big fan of self-fulfilling prophecies.
That is very much true.
And it is. I think it holds true.
Yeah, this one definitely, in my opinion, was you kind of, even though he was the lucky child, you kind of make your own luck if you really look at it. Is the way I interpret it. And yes, he was lucky in those in certain things, but the Cook character, if you really look at what he was more about and how he was not his own prophecy, he was his own maker. He wanted to be where he wanted to be, and it rang true through his kind of storyline of it, and that's kind of what I liked about it. Besides the way, like we said, the Griffin, he was just very an expressive looking creature. And it was just so cool. I was just in awe. And again, with all of these, just looking at these creatures, and going back to just the way the dog is interacted while he's being told the story, and all of these stories, he's going to marry his own father. Oh my God. Like, just the way he was.
The dog was very offended by this. Like, she can't marry her father.
I don't know. The dog in all of these stories is so great. Just going back and forth with it while the storyteller's telling the story. I mean, it's just so. I don't know.
Who was the dog, right?
Yeah.
Brian Henson.
Brian Henson. And if you look, his mannerisms from Hoggle and the dog really just, you can tell when Brian Henson's playing something like that he really likes.
So I had read that basically the dog was supposed to be like what the audience's responses were supposed to be to the storyteller's story. So it was kind of a way of inserting like us into it. You know what I mean? Like we're watching it, and of course, like we'd all be like, "Can't marry your dad." The dog's like doing that for us. So Brian Henson basically is our catharsis.
Yeah, it's genius. It is genius.
So, I mean, I'd recommend people, if you have Amazon Prime, and even I think you can find them all on YouTube as well.
Yep.
Free. Watch these. These are so great. Just for the creatures themselves, and like we've talked about. I love Brian Henson and I love Jim Henson, but there's something about Brian's just zany wit and zaniness. I mean, I know most people aren't a huge fan of Melissa McCarthy, but
I
oh
love
my,
the Happy Time Murders, man.
I love her.
Her too,
Period.
yes.
is some of the funniest Muppets and adult humor Muppets.
Can we just talk about the office sex scene? Like, do we even need to talk about it? That was like the silly string.
Yeah.
Never look at it the same way again.
No,
Oh.
no, it's so great. And it answers the question. Like, it kind of grew up with us and it answered our question, like, what happens when Muppets do get it on? Like,
Yeah.
and he gave it to us.
Yeah.
He gave it to us, and it was gross, and we loved it.
The impact of Henson and the Muppets, Brian and Jim and all of them, it's just so profound. I mean, if you think about like Inmate Number One, the Danny Trejo documentary that John Paul introduced me to, which if you haven't watched it, watch it, because if you
I haven't, but I mean to. I know about it, and I mean to do it. Yeah.
It's one of the best documentaries and one of the best things I've ever seen.
One of the best people, really. Danny Trejo is pretty freaking amazing. But you know, there's him talking about when his mom died, and his mom had died when he was filming. Was it Muppets Most Wanted?
Muppets Most Wanted, yep.
You know, and Danny Trejo is in a lot of ways a traditional tough guy, in a lot of ways not. But you know, he was talking about how he was strong, you know, when his father died for his mom, and he planned on being just as strong when his mom died. And then somebody walked up to him as Kermit the Frog, and Kermit the Frog looked at Danny Trejo and said, "I'm sorry about your mommy." And Danny Trejo broke down.
Yeah, it's crazy, and it's such a thing.
Yeah, there's so many people that can't. Okay, so I'm a singer as well, and I sing with my husband, and we're a little like singing duo. We're called This and That. So shameless plug. Anyway, we sing Rainbow Connection. Like, we sang it for years, and I can get through it when we sing it. Okay, I get through it fine, you know, because you know you're concentrating on that. But every time I see the scene, that opening scene with Kermit with the band, I just cry. Can't help it. It's just one of those childhood things that's so incredibly deep. That and Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas. Oh my goodness. That, when I did go see the Henson exhibit, I saw it when it was in Atlanta, because there's a puppetry museum in Atlanta, and Emmett Otter and Ma in the boat were there, and I can't even look at it.
No hole in the wash tub.
Yeah, I was such a sap about it. I just can't. But I love it, you know.
Yeah, I know. That was my favorite Christmas one too. I mean,
yeah, that and Gremlins are my two favorite Christmas movies. And
I mean, there's Die Hard as well, but you know.
Yeah, and Bruce Willis when he was still hot. Well, I guess he's hot now. He's just. Oh yeah, he's super hot, but he's kind of not nice. I mean, Kevin Smith says that he was the worst person to work with ever. Anyway, I digress. The way that John Hurt delivered the lines as the storyteller, when he was like crevasse and cavern and, you know, cave and canyon, the way that he just poetically went over this writing. Oh my God. And the way that he phrased things and said things was just like nothing else.
It was art, definitely.
Yeah.
Acting at its finest. And
which apparently originally the storyteller was going to be an animatronic puppet.
Yep.
And then I forgot which person it was. They just put prosthetics on an actor as a test thing to show Jim Henson how it would work. And Jim Henson was like, yeah, okay, yeah, that's better. And then we get John Hurt, who's, you know.
Or Jim was going to do it. I think Jim might have been the one after the prosthetic maybe doing it, but then John Hurt became available and he was like, oh, John Hurt all the way.
Yeah.
He is the storyteller. I got John Hurt on my shirt right there. I found it on Redbubble if anybody's in love with this show and then wants the shirt. There was another one. There was Greek Myths.
Yeah.
And it was okay, but it's good, but it's not this.
I haven't watched it yet, so I'm looking forward to it.
Don't expect
You know,
it to be
season
this.
twos never really usually live up to season ones. There's some
Yeah.
exceptions, but it's a rarity. You know, normally it's just the first thing you get wowed by, and then you know the second season, just the expectations are so high that it's hard for some things to live up to it. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
all right, well, John Paul, final thoughts. Come on, you're the
I
big Henson fan. Jump in. I talked over you. Come on, get in there.
I mean, I want people to experience it, honestly. I because it's so available right now. I really, if you guys go seek this out. It's so worth it. And watch any Jim Henson things that you love. You know, the man has done so much for so many people and over the years, from Sesame Street, Fraggle Rock, this just anything. He's touched our lives so much. It's just amazing. I can't say enough. I mean, I've kind of stayed quiet just because the emotions that are just pouring out of me inside is hard, because I do want to cry, and some of these episodes did make me cry because there's just so much just feeling and awe, just watching just a genius, and his art is just so beautiful. It's just hard. It's, I don't know. I'm just at awe with all of this. It just amazes me. I mean, I know I'm just kind of just rambling right now because it just feels so good to just really get this out. And I don't know. I want to just tell people, watch it, enjoy it. Introduce it to your children, introduce it to your friends, your family, just people who don't remember this, or it just clicks back on that you're like, oh my gosh, I have watched this. Oh my gosh, I do know that white lion. That white lion is so just hypnotic. Those eyes are just, I don't know. A plus, I guess. I don't know how to explain it, but I just love it, and I want people to just experience just the wonder. So that's my 2 cents, I guess.
Well, I think especially right now, we could all use something uplifting and lovely. And I think that this is one of those things. And November and December and the winter and the dark months are kind of the cozy season. And this, you get your cozy robe on, and you get a nice spot of tea or coffee or something warm, and just these are perfect for that. They're absolutely perfect for cozy season. And I have news about them, actually. There are books. There are Jim Henson Storyteller books that are available on Amazon. And there has been interest from a certain Neil Gaiman about revamping this as a new show. And I'm going to lose my mind if that happens. Like, I may nerd explode. I don't know.
Gaiman, Henson Creature
And
Shop
Henson.
would be great.
Oh my God.
And that also means we'd see more diversity, because that's like
Yes.
the one true criticism I have about the show. And maybe it was just this time as it was made, but it's all white everywhere. You know what I mean? And
I want to see them do Anansi. Oh my God, would I love to see them do Anansi the spider.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be incredible. And some of those beautiful African and Indian stories would be so cool to see them tackle.
Well,
but it's
even just cast wise, there was no reason that there couldn't have been, more tapestry and varied,
right.
skin tones and ethnicities. It was just all white people. Of course, it was in England, so
it was British production.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think that I hope that they do pick it back up. The books are they're broken down into Jim Henson Storyteller Sirens, Jim Henson Storyteller Ghosts. That looks like a good one. I may have to get that one. There's a couple more, but I can't. Giants, maybe. Fairies. There's one that's fairies. I would love to see them tackle a fairy story or a mermaid story. Like Ludi and the Mermaid would be fantastic for folklore. For them to tackle on a new show would be great.
Yeah.
So
here's to hoping.
Yeah. Well, I thank you guys so much for having me. You know, I can nerd out about this for as long as you'd
Yeah.
like.
No, yeah, I mean, absolutely. And it's been wonderful having you. So again,
Yeah,
remember
thank you.
Pixie dances with
Thank-
Lotus Lifted, makes her own stuff, and is part of a husband-wife band, This or That, correct?
This and that. Yeah, we're on
So
Facebook.
check them out. Of course, we
Plug
got John
away
Paul.
whatever you need to plug.
We got John Paul, who also hosts Schlockfest with Ray McGuff, where he tortures Ray with various movies and such. Definitely check that out.
Yeah,
And
we
of
have
course-
Nightmare Weekend coming out soon.
Oh yeah, I want to definitely see that.
Oh boy, I can't wait till people discover Nightmare Weekend.
So you
Or
both
not.
stayed awake for that one?
We did some social distancing on that one. It kept him awake because you know, random boobs makes Randy stay awake.
That makes everybody stay awake, I think.
So
I mean, really, you know, boobs. Oh, no.
no!
I, of course, am Jenny Morrow, and you can, you know, find me here on What the Fuck Did I Just Watch, or you can see me dancing with Sacred Shimmy sometimes. Definitely check out Sacred Shimmy. Angie Never is the director, and she's also a dance teacher and a yoga teacher, and just fabulous person. Check out what she has to offer right now. All her classes are $10 each, and you can get them online over Zoom. Take them while she's doing them, and she, you know, it's live and interactive, or you can watch the recording later and do it that way. And she also has a Patreon, so go check that out. And of course, Zombie Takeover TV is who hosts us, and they have several wonderful podcasts, so you can check any of those out. So go look there. And thanks for watching.